Today, our guest is an integrative energy practitioner who specializes in EFT, also known as tapping. Through her work, Lauren helps people move through emotional blocks and chronic pain by addressing the root cause and the unprocessed emotions and limiting beliefs. If you've ever felt stuck, physically or emotionally, this conversation could be the key to unlock your next steps forward. Lauren, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me today.
So, I'm I always feel like EFT is just there for me and I never really get into it.
hmm
And I think maybe because I don't understand how it works.
hmm Sure. So EFT stands for Emotional Freedom Technique. So it's a process that helps you with just that, finding freedom from your emotions. And it's a process of gently tapping on certain points of the body while you're simultaneously speaking out loud and acknowledging how you're feeling. And the points that we're tapping on are the end points of the meridians, and that's how energy moves through the body. So those are some of the same points that an acupuncturist would use when you go for a session and they take the tiny little needles and put them into your body, but instead we're using acupressure. And it's a process that has been shown to help reduce the amount of cortisol in the body, which is the stress hormone. So when you are in that state of fight or flight and feeling like you can't really think straight, tapping is a wonderful tool to use to help to bring you down and ground you. But at the same time, it's also a really wonderful tool to use on a proactive basis day to day to just incorporate as part of your self care, because it can help with so many different things, from anxiety and stress to limiting beliefs to reducing physical pain. And the more that you practice it ahead of time, the easier it's going to be to implement when you're in those really overwhelming situations.
So I kind of get the concept of doing it in an overwhelming situation.
hmm
Like you have this, you know, emotion come up or an experience, a trigger that happens to you. And then you tap and it, brings down your cortisol levels and brings you back to homeostasis.
hmm
But how does it work on something that's happened in the past or
Yeah.
a limiting belief?
Yeah. So we'll start with a limiting belief. So if a common one is I'm not good enough, right? It's a core belief that has kind of just run in the background for a lot of people, and that could be related to a lot of different experiences in your life, right? And when we have these experiences that we don't necessarily have the tools to be able to process them, they just kind of stay stuck in the body, and they can build up over time. Maybe it's, an example could be like a teacher telling you that you did a terrible job, and then something happens years later, and your parent could have said something, or a friend could have said something, and all of these experiences build up, and this belief of I'm not good enough feels really, really true. And so you might not necessarily know about all of these past experiences. You just know that this feeling of I'm not good enough is really strong. And so you start there, and you start by tapping on the points and saying something along the lines of, even though I don't feel good enough, that's just how I feel today. Or even though I don't feel good enough, I love, honor, and accept myself. I don't feel good enough. And you can stay with those same exact words. I don't feel good enough, tapping through each of the points. And as you're doing that, you're noticing what's happening inside of your body. Is there a physical sensation that you're becoming aware of? Is there a memory that's making its way to the surface? And it really is this process of connecting the dots. And you would be surprised by what starts to make itself known. Things that have been in the subconscious start to make their way up to the conscious mind. And that gives us a way of beginning to hold space for ourselves, allowing ourselves to feel the discomfort with that, or the sadness or the anger about these situations that have happened in the past, allowing us to begin to process them so that we can really understand why we feel that way, and begin to let it go.
So is there work that needs to be done around doing the tapping? Because if these emotions are coming up, do you need to be journaling or processing them, or is the tapping enough to process the emotion.
Yeah, I mean, I think tapping is enough. If you are someone who does like to journal, I would say do that too. You know, this is a practice that can definitely complement other practices for sure. I love to journal, so when I have what we call a cognitive shift or one of those like aha moments where I realize something, then I do like to journal more about it. And sometimes the journaling leads to another aha moment, and that's something else that I could tap on as well. So it's really up to the person, but I do think that tapping in itself is enough.
And so when you're tapping, you're stimulating the meridian line. Is that correct?
Yes.
And how does that actually move the energy or reduce the cortisol or allow you to like calm down enough to let these other feelings and thoughts come up?
Yeah. So I like to do a visual example of this. So I don't know, for those people that are just listening to this, right? I'm making a fist with my hand and I'm putting my thumb inside of my fist. And if you pretend that the fist is the brain, and this part of the brain where the knuckles are is the forehead, which is the prefrontal cortex. This is where we make our good sound decisions, right? So information comes up the brainstem to the prefrontal cortex where we make these good decisions. Now, when you are in that state of, extreme anxiety, chronic pain, really overwhelmed, what's happening is information's coming up the brainstem. But now we're going to pretend my thumb is the amygdala. Oh, the amygdala is the part of the brain that controls fight or flight, right? And so when that amygdala starts firing, it's sending cortisol into the body. So now when the information is trying to get up to that brain, to the prefrontal cortex, it literally can't access that part of the brain because the amygdala is sending all of this cortisol down into the body. So what's happening is that when we tap on the points, it's sending a message to the amygdala and it's saying, hey, amygdala, this is not a life or death situation. You don't need to be creating all of that cortisol. So then slowly that prefrontal cortex can come back online. So now we can think clearly again. So that instance where that amygdala is firing and all that cortisol's coming into the body, it may be a thought like, I can't even think straight. And you may even say that out loud, right? You might be working on a project, sitting at your computer, and you just don't even know what to do next. Like, I'm so overwhelmed, I can't even think straight. And you literally can't because you can't access that part of the brain. So tapping on these meridian points is sending a message to this amygdala and saying, hey, bud, calm down. You don't need to be creating all that cortisol. So now we can think more clearly and feel calmer.
That's so fascinating. I've never heard it explained like that before. It makes so much sense.
Yeah.
So if you are somebody who's lived in survival mode for a long period of time, your amygdala is continuously firing.
Mm-hmm.
So could that help you get out of survival mode?
Yeah. I mean, the thing is that so many of us, I feel like, are living with chronic anxiety and stress. It's unfortunately pretty common. And sometimes we don't even realize it, right? When you're living in that state all the time, it feels like it's normal.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, this is a tool that can help you feel calmer in your body. And that might feel weird at first, right? Like, I mean, when I was first introduced to this, I was very skeptical of this idea that I could tap on myself and feel less anxious. Like, that sounded very strange to me, right? Um, and so if you're listening to this and that sounds strange to you, that's okay. This is not one of those practices that you have to believe in order for it to work. But if you just give it a try and see how you respond to it, and that's what happened for me. Like, I started tapping. I was like, what the heck is happening? I'm actually feeling calmer. I mean, I was intrigued by that. And I wanted to understand what's going on in my brain. Like, something's happening. I don't know what's happening, but something's happening. And so that was enough for me to continue to tap on my own, tap with a practitioner, and appreciate the difference in how I was feeling. Because sometimes we can, we want to understand something so much that it can take away from the fact that, like, I'm just feeling better. So sometimes I also will encourage people, like, we don't have to figure it all out right now. You don't have to know all the answers of why you feel better right now, but let's just like throw out some gratitude for the fact that you're feeling better, because it's such a simple tool.
So A lot of people talk about the homeostasis of the body, and you can be in homeostasis in like survival mode, and that becomes your new normal. Can this help you to create that nice, new, calm homeostasis, and that can become your new normal?
Yeah, yeah. So it's been shown to help create new neural pathways. So when our thoughts create our feelings, and our feelings create our actions, and our actions create our results, right? So it all starts with shifting our thoughts. So if we're holding space for the thoughts that we're having and allowing ourselves to have the feelings related to those thoughts, then things can begin to change, and it helps to create some distance from it, right? So like going back to what we were talking about before, like that belief, like I'm not good enough, right? That could be something that you've never actually verbalized out loud, and something that you've just been running on repeat in your head, saying to yourself over and over and over again. And then the act of actually saying it out loud and hearing yourself say it, sometimes that in itself can begin to create the shift, and you create a little bit of distance from it. So you're looking at it and you're like, oh, like, why am I doing this to myself? Like, I know, like deep down, I know that that's not true, right? And that can begin to create the change.
So I've heard like some people doing like tapping for like 90 minutes to completely really clear out a past trauma.
Hmm.
Can it be done that quickly?
Um, I would say it depends. It
Okay.
depends on the person. It depends on, um, you know, your willingness to kind of look at things in a new light, your readiness for healing. Um, and I know those things can be sticky because, you ask someone who's in pain if you're ready to heal, they're most likely going to be like, of course I am, right? But I often give this example. I was working with a woman who was dealing with a lot of physical pain in her body. And one of the questions that I asked as we were going through and tapping on the points was, is there any sort of benefit for you being in this pain? And that's a tough question. And instead of just saying, no, of course not, she really paused and she thought about it. And she said, well, because I'm in this pain, my kids are coming to visit me more often. And that really gave her pause. So then that opened another doorway for us to tap on. So is there a fear that if you're healthy and feeling good and not in pain, that you're not going to see your kids as much, right? And so those were things that we tapped on. And as we did, there was a reduction. There was a direct reduction in the pain in her knees.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
So it can work physically and emotionally.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Well, I think the two are tied together anyway.
100%. Yeah, I think that this is such a beautiful tool that really helps connect the mind and the body, because our bodies are always trying to communicate with us. They're always trying to tell us something, right? And while we can be just like super annoyed with the pain that we're physically feeling, maybe if we can try to get curious about it, then those aha moments, or that awareness can come. Or, sometimes an exercise that I'll do with somebody that's having physical pain is, if the pain could talk, or if the sensation could say something to you right now, what would it say? And sometimes that can feel a little silly, but if you just go with it and go with the first thing that comes to your mind, you might be surprised. You might just be surprised. And then you can almost have a conversation with it. So the sensation says something to you, like, I'm so tired, right? And then you're saying, yeah, but I have so much to do, right? You can just kind of go back and forth between like the mind and the body. And it can be very, very healing. It can be a very healing process to do that.
So how did you get into this?
I got into this because of my own healing journey and my own struggles with anxiety and stress, and looking for some holistic ways of feeling better in my body. And I went on this whole journey where I became a trauma-informed yoga instructor, a Reiki practitioner. I also do sound healing, and I was in a coaching group where I was introduced to tapping, and it was a total game changer for me, because when I was experiencing that really severe anxiety, that was also showing up as severe TMJ pain. And when I found out that tapping could help with physical pain, I was very curious about that. And my first session with a practitioner, I had a pretty big aha moment and a big shift in the pain. And it became abundantly clear to me that that there was anger and frustration and resentment that I had been holding on to in my jaw. And once I was able to kind of connect that and realize that, there was a big difference in the pain level. So after that, I was hooked.
So, do you find that there is a part in the body that holds specific emotions, or is it dependent on the person?
I think there are some commonalities with certain areas, but I do think we're all different, and so it can vary from person to person. I'm a big fan of Louise Hay, and how she has that. I'm forgetting the name of the book.
Uh,
Um,
um,
where she lists like what emotions are attached with the physical pains in the different areas of the body.
I have it on my phone, so I'm going to check.
Okay, yeah. And just yesterday, I was working with a client, and she was having issues with her knee, and then I'm like, I'm gonna look it up real quick, and I'm like, does any of that resonate? And she said yes, and so it's. I do think that there's some accuracy with with that.
The app on the phone is called Heal Body. That's
Mm,
all it says. So I
okay.
I didn't open it, but um. So do you still do trauma informed yoga and Reiki
I do.
and
I do.
so do you find that the Reiki and the tapping work well together?
Yeah, I do. And I for a while I was teaching a tapping and a yoga class together, a yin tapping class. So I would have everybody tap. I usually had a theme, so let's say like anxiety, and we would tap about anxiety, and then I'd move them into a pose. And with yin, you're holding the poses for several minutes, and so I would invite them to develop their own phrase that they're kind of working through, and kind of visualizing themselves tapping on the points as we're just holding the pose, and then we would come back together and tap together and move to another pose. So I do think that so many other modalities are a wonderful complement to it, for sure.
I would love to do that class. Yin yoga is like my favorite.
Yeah, it's a good one. It's a good one.
um, so sorry. Um, so when you working with the energies of Reiki, for example, that's you doing something or moving energy on somebody else. And tapping is them doing it for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a benefit to doing your own work?
I think there's always a benefit to doing your own work. I always like to say that I'm just a guide, and you're healing yourself. I think it's most powerful when you're having the realizations yourself, right? Like um, as a practitioner, and I'm tapping with somebody, and I might, they might be saying something like it's all my fault, right? Thinking about something from their childhood, and they really feel like it's all my fault. That thing happened and it was all my fault. And me, as the outsider, as the practitioner, I can say like, oh, you were just a baby, like it's not your fault, right? But that's not what feels true for the person.
Yeah.
And so it's not going to be helpful for me to say, oh, it's not your fault, because that doesn't resonate with them. However, if we keep tapping and they keep saying like, it was all my fault. It was all my fault. It was all my fault. And then I ask a question like, if, if this was your daughter that this happened to, what would you say to her? And then it was like, oh, of course it's not your fault. And so we keep, so then it's like, if this happened to my daughter, it wouldn't be her fault. And then there might be this link of like, oh, it really wasn't my fault. I was just a kid, but they came to that on their own. And as the practitioner, I'm just kind of asking questions that might help guide them through that process.
So like if you go online and you look for EFT or you look for tapping, they're pretty generic.
Mm-hmm.
Or they could be dealing with like a specific thing, but it's not specific to you. So it could be anxiety, but it's just general anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
Does that is that just as effective as doing something that a script is completely specific to you?
No. So I think it's great that there's tons of YouTube videos out there. You know, I put out videos every week just so that people have an opportunity to see someone. And one of the biggest things that people say is like, I don't know what to say when I'm tapping. So
Yeah.
having a video to tap
That's
along
also how I feel. Like I never, like, I don't know what to do. Like,
Right.
what am I doing?
Yeah, that's very, very common. So, I think the videos can be great for that, for getting people started. However, to your point, it is the words that you're saying are very, very important. So, you can start off more broad because maybe you need to, right? Maybe it's like, I'm really overwhelmed. I don't even know. Like, it's everything. Everything is just really overwhelming, right? So you can start there and you can tap on that. But then it's kind of like a funnel. You start really big and you hone in on what's really going on for you. And so if the words that are being used in the video really aren't resonating with how you are feeling, I'm always going to encourage people to pause that video, take a nice deep breath, and what is it that you're feeling. And it doesn't have to be, it could be one word. I'm feeling really angry, and you just say that, I'm really angry, and just tap on the points. I'm so angry, I'm so angry, and go through a round and pause, take a deep breath. What's coming up now? Maybe it's a memory of something that happened in the past, right? And you can say, even though I'm thinking about the time he said that to me, or whatever it is, right? Just putting some words to it and going through a point and just allowing the tapping to do the work and just seeing what the next thing is that comes to mind and using those words.
And how many rounds do you recommend someone do at a time?
Yeah. So, in a one-on-one session, typically it's anywhere from 45 minutes to an hour.
And are
Um,
you tapping that entire time?
Most of the time, yeah.
Okay.
Um, which sometimes people are like, "Oh, that's a lot of tapping," but it really does go fast. Um, but how much tapping is really based on like how much time do you have, right? Like if you only have a couple of minutes, tap for a couple of minutes. If but ideally you're going to tap for as long as it takes you to reduce the intensity. So if you come into it and you're really angry about something, right, and you give it a number on a scale of 0 to 10, how angry are you? How intense is this? And you say it's an 8. If you can tap it down by just talking about how angry you are about whatever it is, to so that it feels like maybe a 6 or a 5 or a 4, something that's more comfortable for you, then that's success.
So then how does that work? If let's say I am I'm going to use anger as an example. I am angry about something that happened in my childhood.
Hmm.
I have very strong feelings, one of them being anger.
Hmm.
But I don't feel that anger all the time.
Hmm.
And I want to tap on it.
Hmm.
So how do I do the rating on that?
So like you could say like in this in this moment you're saying I'm not really feeling the anger, but if I um you know there are moments, right, where you are really feeling that anger. So you can start with where you are right now in the moment. Right now I'm not feeling that angry, and that's okay. And starting at like a more neutral thing on something that might be pretty intense from childhood is probably a good thing. And so you can start right there. Even though I'm not feeling the anger right now. I'm still really angry that this happened to me, right? And kind of go from there.
And so for people who want to get very specific, and obviously when we're done, I'm going to ask you where people can find you so they can connect with you and stuff. But let's say they want to, feel this out for themselves. How do you recommend that they begin?
Yeah. So, if you want to just give it a try, I would say go on YouTube and try a video. You can check out my YouTube page, which is Mind Shift with Lauren. Um, or, I also have a free masterclass if you want to learn a little bit more about the science behind it. Um, but Yeah, I would just, or you could just look up where the points are and just do some tapping and breathing and see how just tapping and breathing makes you feel. But I think finding a practitioner that you kind of jive with, even if it's just somebody on YouTube that you can tap along with, will be helpful for beginners.
And are there endless points on the body, or are there set points?
So there are set points that are part of the tapping protocol, but there are some additional points, just like how with acupuncture, there are points all over the body that the acupuncturist will put the needles in at. There are additional points that you can tap on, but for the typical EFT protocol, there are set points. And I will always say, if there's a particular point that you don't like, right? Some people just like have an aversion to a particular point, you can skip over it. There's really like no wrong way of doing this. And if tapping on the points bothers you, because I've worked with some clients that have fibromyalgia and the act of like actually tapping on the points was bothersome, you can just massage the points. That's like also another option as well.
Um, do you think that tapping on a specific point that bothers you, there is a lot of stored emotion in there?
Yeah, I definitely do. One of the points is under the arm, so the side of the body. So for women, about the center of the bra strap on the side of the body. And I definitely had a client who had a strong aversion to that point. And the meridians are attached to different organs in the body. So there was curiosity around that, and it made sense later on with finding out things that had happened in her past and what that was related to. But so I do think that there probably is some sort of reason when you do have a strong aversion to something. But sometimes, sometimes it doesn't have to be so deep, right? Like, so one of the points is underneath the eyes and so the sinuses, right? So if you're somebody that has a lot of allergies and just like tapping on that is not comfortable for you, it could just be as simple as that too.
And what's your biggest transformation story that you have with a client, or
Mm.
even with yourself?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I've had lots. Like one client came to me with a fear of going on elevators, and there was never any, experience in her past where she was trapped in an elevator or anything like that. So she didn't really know where it came from. She never really liked elevators, and as she got older, the fear got stronger and stronger, and it was really impacting her life. She wasn't able to, go to New York and go stay in a hotel because she knew she was going to have to take an elevator and all of these things. And she decided to try tapping. She tried a bunch of other things. And we worked together for 8 weeks. And by the end of the 8 weeks, she actually had a trip planned. And she emailed me at the end of that trip, and she said that she was able to go on every single elevator that was in her path. And it was really a big thing for her. It was life changing for her. So that
That
was
that
really.
is amazing.
Mhm.
So while you were tapping on that, and I know you can't give the details away, but did some emotional blocks come up? Like, was there a link? Did you discover that through the tapping?
Yeah, there were things that happened in her young adult life that led to this fear of really being in enclosed spaces. Yeah,
And she didn't remember that, or she didn't make the connection
she did
before?
not make the connection. She had not thought about it. It was something that you know, came to mind, and at first she was like, "I don't think this has anything to do with this," but it wasn't something that she had thought about in a very long time.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, as we draw towards the end of our interview, I want to ask you if there's anything that you want to share that I haven't asked you yet.
Mm. Well, there's just lots of different nuanced ways of using tapping. So if you are a really visual person, there's lots of practices where you can kind of close your eyes, and if let's say you're, feeling sensation in your chest, you can kind of close your eyes and see if some sort of picture comes to mind, and you can tap on the picture. There's lots of um and it's never something that you have to dive in. I always say you don't have to dive into the deep end and, really relive all these past traumas. It's not like that. It's a very, very gentle practice that meets you where you are. And And if you ever come up against a practitioner who's like, we got to go deep and you got to relive the trauma, please go find another practitioner. Like, this is supposed to be very gentle. And it can be very, very transformative. So, and yeah, just if it's something that you're curious about, give yourself the gift of going and exploring it, because and I'm passionate about that, because that's what led me on this path, and that's what led me to where I am today, was just me going and taking classes and exploring different things that piques my curiosity, and we all deserve to do that for ourselves.
That's beautiful. I have one more question though.
Yeah, sure.
So, could you do like a round of tapping when you're stuck at a traffic light?
Yeah, you sure could.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I'll say, like, we're all like washing our hair a few times a week, right? Hopefully, or in the shower at least, right? And so you could tap while you're in the shower, put some shampoo in your hair, and then, wait before you wash it out and do a round of tapping. And, because what a lot of people say is like, when am I going to find the time to do one more thing, right? Just attach it to something else that you're already doing. So yeah, I love that. At a stoplight, do a round of tapping.
That's fantastic. Well, Lauren, where can people find you?
So you can find me at my website, which is mindshiftwithlauren.com. I'm also on YouTube. You can find me there. Same thing, Mindshift with Lauren. And I'm on Instagram. My Instagram name is Lauren Nicole, but and the O is a zero. But if you put in Mindshift with Lauren, I'll pop up on Instagram too.
That's great. Well, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thanks so much for having me.